but that's fine. Wow, hey, right on the money.
So we were talking about time travel and about how in 1938 time travel was already a reality here, at least
It was a reality in the United States because of a particular program which was uncovered. They named it Project Southern Cross. It involved the discovery of large crystal formations on the bottom of the ocean and South Atlantic, actually down in this, what is called the Southern Cross area over the equator, close to the coast of South America, still within the area of what is commonly called the Bermuda Triangle. They discovered, from Navy ships, discovered a large crystalline formation on the floor of the ocean. Well, they decided to go exploring this thing and finding out what is it, what's it doing, and so forth and so on. How did it get there? It looked to be like a one-piece structure. Whether it's grown or not, I have not the details, but a modern naval ship, a warship, has, of course, many complex communications and control systems, magnetic fields, generated RF fields, and so forth. Basically, what happened was exploring this thing, and all of a sudden the ship disappeared. It wasn't there anymore. It happened to be the USS Kearsarge, just newly commissioned. And it did come back, but there's some varying stories on what happened. What I remember reading in the records was that it came back after a period of time, and it was not explained in those records how they found out what had happened and where they went and how they got back. But what they had done was accidentally activate an old Atlantean crystal formation. The Atlanteans had buried these things all over the ocean floor, all over the world, and they used it for a transportation system for very heavy loads on barges, and it could apparently be used also for time travel. The Kearsarge went into the future, apparently, and then found its way back, found out how to calibrate the system and make it usable so that other ships having the proper equipment could use it. And so from 1938 on, they used this for time travel. And during the period of World War II, when we were losing the war, and we were losing it very badly against Hitler for up until 1943, they didn't really know what to do, but the info I got from various sources was that the people who now comprise the New World Order decided they were not going to allow the world to come under the sway of Hitler's secret societies, like the Thule Society is one example, and of course there were others, the Brill Society and the Black Sun Group. They weren't going to allow the world to come under the control of those societies. So it was an all-out effort, of course, to win the war. It started to turn around in '43 with the, shall we say, taking of secret weapons out of the future in the 70s and the 80s. Were used to help win the war in that period of 1943 through 45. But that was for time travel. The Germans had already worked on it themselves, and they had a working system about 1934. How good or how crude it was, I don't know, but they did have one that was working. And they did a lot of work on time travel and time research up through the war, and then when the war was over and they lost it, those German scientists were brought to the United States to continue the research. And it was continued in the U.S. at Brookhaven National Laboratories at first from 1947 onward, and then to other projects which blossomed forth in other directions from other agencies. The Navy was in on it. I do not know what the CIA was or not, but there were other secret agencies that were. And time travel became a, shall we say, a government pet project, in which they were very successful. They made it work.
How did that differ from the time travel at Montauk? This was also space time travel.
Right. Montauk was a different animal, so to speak. Let us put it this way. Regular time travel, ordinary time travel, means that if, for example, you had the equipment to move me in time, sitting here in the chair, move me a year into the past or a year into the future, as long as the building's still here, and I'd be sitting in the same chair in the same location. The table may be gone, the books may be gone, but the room and the building would be here. You go back in the past, I would be physically in the same location. You go back 100 years, well, there might not be a building here. I might be hitting the deck, as it were, but physically in the same location. What Montauk did with alien help was develop a system for time and space travel simultaneously. First it was just used around the planet, then later on they used it as, I don't know if they used it on the moon, I presume they did, but they did use it to explore the underground of Mars, where they learned there were some remains of an old civilization in the underground of Mars, and they used that extensively for Montauk for investigation. I went on a couple of those trips. And then it was used to travel elsewhere, all over the galaxy. and explore time also at the same time.
This wasn't done without the help of some
Alien groups, that's right.
Exactly.
The reason that happened was, of course, in 1954, I might add, the problem began with the lockup of the Philadelphia experiment and the Montauk Project, August 12th, 43, August 12th, 83. It ripped a hole in space-time, created a rift in time, if you will, which allowed large numbers of aliens to come through with big ships and large quantities of aliens and so forth, which had not happened before. There had been aliens here, and they've been here for a long time, but they came through in smaller ships in small numbers. They weren't here as a mass invasion. They came through in large numbers. They created the problems in the 50s, the overflights to the White House and so forth, and finally they landed at Edwards Air Force Base in 1954 and challenged our government and our scientists to try and take their ships apart, do anything with them. And after 2 weeks, we couldn't. I read the private letters and communications years ago on this. But this got so bad that Eisenhower was invited down there to see this phenomena, if you will. And the military told him, he says, sign a treaty with these aliens. He said, make some kind of a treaty. We got to buy time to figure out what to do with them and what to do about all of this. I mean, here we thought we were the king of the heap of having won World War II and had nuclear energy, nuclear weapons and bombs, working on the hydrogen bomb and so forth. And then along comes this group from outside with technology that made us look like we were working with toy firecrackers from the last century. So they made an agreement. It was called the Greada Treaty, and it was signed in 1954 by Eisenhower. And this allowed free access to Earth with the aliens, cooperation on technical matters, technical exchanges, non-interference with each other's civilization. That was a prime point of agreement. And from that point on, of course, the aliens were here, and by government agreement, they became part of the Montauk Project at a later time when it became an independent project from Brookhaven about 1967, 68. And the aliens came in as part of that project and helped us design the Montauk, what we call the Montauk Project. The time-space travel device, the mechanism was very large. It wasn't a simple thing. And with their help, we built it, and it became functional about 1970, partially functional about 76, 77. They finally got it under control, working the way they wanted it to work in 1980. But without the alien technology added into this, we couldn't have done it. We could do time travel, we couldn't do time and space both, in a local area around the Earth or outside.
A question that I would have is that were these extraterrestrials not already well versed in time, space travel?
Of course they were.
So
they already knew all about it, and most alien races that are technologically advanced sufficiently to come to Earth know all about time travel. They use it as part of their transportation system. Of course, they don't all come from what we call our time. You have to get a new concept of what time is. Time is a continuum. We live in our references in a singular point, moving along the time stream, if you will, in an essentially linear manner. It's like if you draw a graph on a cathode ray tube screen or on a wall, and you have a little mark along that line and it moves at a regular rate. That reference point is what we call our reference point in time, our year 1997, the date as it is today in November. But the time is a continuum. It is not an illusion, it is a reality, and if you can travel into the past, you can see what happened then. If you go into the future, you can see what is likely to happen in the future. The only thing is the future is not absolutely rigidly fixed. It is alterable. For that matter, so is the past, if you know how to do it. And some of these groups, alien groups, wanted to alter our past, and they're working with the New World Order. They want to alter the past to some extent to guarantee the success of the New World Order in the near future.
There are some that believe they've already accomplished some of that.
They believe it has been accomplished, but the problem is a few monkey wrenches have been thrown. There's a wall or a block of the year 2012, 2013, which the New World Order people are very concerned about because they know there's going to be a physical blockade to travel past that time point. And not everybody is blocked, from what I understand, but nevertheless, they were concerned what's going to happen after that point. They know what all of the prophecies have said. They know what they have seen through their own time travel. The two types or systems, one is, of course, Project Looking Glass, which you just look in the future or the past.
We see now?
And the other is, of course, where you go there. And when you go there, you actually create a minor rift and a minor alteration just by the fact that you came from another time. That already creates a change. And if you do enough of this, you can create major changes. And this is one of the problems. We are creating major changes with the time travel. The time travel, so I don't know if you were down at Alex's lecture at 2 o'clock, has been shut down. The Andromedans shut it down for defense purposes on their own system because of what happened between the Philadelphia experiment and the Montauk Project locking up and creating this huge rift.
That 40-year period it created a rift in time.
Yes.
And that rift in time allowed some travel to occur, and
Yes.
now somehow that's threatened the Andromedans?
It threatens them because ships of a large size of aliens who are, let us say, the arch enemies of the Andromedans, were able to get through using that rift, that break, in large numbers.
Which is unnatural.
And then, yes, it is unnatural. And through that rift and go to the period in time where they can confront the Andromedan civilization. And if they get through large enough numbers, it constitutes a military impasse, which is now destroyed, and a possible military victory for the aliens. The Andromedans are working in self-defense. Their problem was they had a standoff, a stalemate, for millennia. And now all of a sudden it has been bypassed. Not as their concern, as Alex pointed it out, they are concerned with defending themselves. There's a loophole, shall we say, through the continuum from another universe somewhere where the alien ships are getting through in large numbers, large enough to make a military difference in terms of the Andromedans situation. We're on the periphery. We're not directly involved at this point in the wars that are going on in space, but we are in an issue, in a certain way we are involved. Because we have hardware, we have traveled in time and space. There are certain aspects of planet Earth at this time which are highly desirable to certain alien groups because they can use our technology. They can fuel their wars from our technology and from our resources, and create a little bit of mayhem using Earth as an operating base. And this is what's been going on in secret. There's an awful lot of military hardware, highly advanced stuff being built underground that the public doesn't know about. There are military bases all over the world, secret bases very deep underground. But that's one of the aspects, and of course the other one is the fact that Earth is desirable in certain respects, and they are inspecting us as a race. How did we get where we are? What are our characteristics? We have some strange characteristics according to some of the comments by aliens which have been recorded that makes us of interest. So they are looking us over, and who knows what they ultimately intend. But the other problem is we have a war going on under our feet, more alien problems. And then we have another neat little thing called the New World Order, which is attempting to take over on a one unified government of Earth, all of the governments, all of the countries, and impose their own ideas of government. And they are backed by aliens.
And that would be a complete and total loss of individual power.
Absolutely. Total loss of individual rights, of the freedoms and guarantees under our Constitution and other constitutions of other nations. They're all being whittled away, and they want essentially to destroy that and make a very rigidly controlled society, a much smaller population than we have now, because we got approximately 6.5 going on 7 billion people on this planet now, and they want to cut it down to less than 1 billion. And they were hoping on various cosmological events aiding them, namely the Hale-Bopp comet, which didn't hit the Earth. It was diverted. It was on a collision course, according to information I have. It was not naturally on a collision course. It was re-steered.
Aren't there many prophecies that even state that?
Oh, yes, very true. Nostradamus, among others, that there would be a large object that would hit the Earth and cause extreme damage. They were estimating Hale-Bopp hit the Earth would wipe out 2/3 of the population. That's a lot of population to get rid of in one shot.
Even the Old Testament uses the language with Hale-Bopp's name in it in Psalms.
Mm-hmm.
Psalms 97 or 96, I believe.
Well, Hale-Bopp was a problem in 97 this year, but it was known for many years prior to that. It was tracked, I understand, by the military for 10 years, the military and NASA. It's the largest comet ever to come in the solar system known in history. That doesn't mean prior to known history. There might have been others, but nevertheless the largest in history. And it tracked for a long time, over 10 years. And it finally came in, they were tracking it, they had very good pictures of it, had good pictures of the object falling behind it. Actually, Bob. It was, following object was measured and estimated.
What was the object called?
Some people called it wormwood, others called it by other names. According to Virgil, who just left, it was called wormwood, and it was called that from the Vatican texts and other Christian texts, and was measured and cited and recorded by various, shall we say, space vehicles, as well as a Hale-Bopp, which has been functioning quite well. It's 1,000 miles in diameter, spherical, obviously artificial, and had a central ring around it, reminiscent of the rings of Saturn, but not the same kind of structure, because it was very solid, and it was 4,000 miles in diameter. And the military or the government or whomever, of course, has remote viewers. And as I got the story feedback from somebody I know in the military, 137 remote viewers took a look at the object behind Hale-Bopp and came up with 137 different answers as to what it was, what was in it, and what it was doing. The military took a dim view of this. They said if it was friendly, there would have been correlation of many of the remote viewers. I know they won't all agree perfectly, but if it was friendly, they would have gotten some very strong intimation that it was similar results, similar responses, and that it was friendly. So the 137 different answers, their view was they were getting, shall we say, answers back to the reviewers, which the returnees from on the object wanted the remote viewers to see based on what they thought they wanted to see. So they got 137 different answers in accordance with what the remote viewer might have already had in his mind, or her mind. They took the view that this thing was hostile, and it was destroyed after Hale-Bopp was on his way out.
It was destroyed? Was it destroyed?
Totally.
Oh, really?
Vaporized.
By whom?
By us?
Us. Whether or not there was any help, I can't say, but the word I have is that the military, assuming it was U.S., it might have been joint, but I will assume it was U.S. military, had the means to destroy it with a single missile, with a single bomb of a new type.
Now, Sitchin's work described a potential that was Ea returning. Is that right?
No, this is not considered the 12th planet, Marduk, as it sometimes is called. No, it's much larger. Marduk is much larger than the Earth.
Right,
still
Marduk
coming,
is,
isn't it?
right.
It's supposedly still coming.
Yeah.
Sitchin cannot be pinned down to a date as when it's supposed to come in. Many people have tried. He will not give an exact date, and astronomically they're not really sure. And from what I've heard, the thing has apparently been changing speed, which is rather unusual for a large object that size. If it is, and that's the reports, and I do not know their accuracy as to whether this is a true, accurate statement. But they claim it's been changing speed, and therefore they can't really predict when it's going to be back in the solar system, except it is on a 3,600-year orbit.
Right.
And normally it's well out of the solar system. It was not originally part of the solar system, but in terms of, let us say, the astronomical and cosmological aspects of the solar system, it is part of it now, even though it's not here most of the time. Various people, astronomers and others, started with Velikovsky, who made an analysis of the movements and perturbations of the outer planets of our solar system, said flat out, he said, there are perturbations of the orbit of Pluto. There has to be at least one more planet out there, and he had no idea what it was, where it was, or anything else. He just said it has to be there. Well, Sitchin came along, and after searching the old Sumerian records, came up with the answer of the 12th planet. And it would appear he's correct. From what I've seen of it, it looks like he's right. Astronomers are not arguing with him. They're not saying anything publicly either, yes or no. They're just keeping quiet. Sitchin has been pretty good on his data. I would say very good from what I've seen of it. It comes out of ancient texts.
He's very diligent.
He is a diligent researcher, absolutely. It's quite thorough.
Tell us a little bit more about, up to present moment, the issue that occurred at the beginning of October, where the Andromedans shut down time travel.
Yes. The Andromedans were threatening to shut down time travel on planet Earth. They've already shut it down in the upper lower domains, according to Alex's data that they gave him, which is causing now a slow encroachment, folding in. These are two alternate realities. I won't go into the theory about 7, but there are two alternate realities of Earth as the main timeline is, in which they had time travel equipment, and they had, shall we say, somewhat altered realities from what we have. And according to Alex again, the Andromedans said they shut down time travel in those two realities. They are starting to fold in on this one, the main timeline, and are affecting us, because I've seen it, and I know other people who are sensitive have seen the fact that there are strange things happening, overlaps of people from another reality you see physically for a short period of time, and it's gone. I mean, you see someone walking through a room you know doesn't belong there, or someone you know with slightly different appearance walking through the same room where they normally are. This is an alternate reality type thing. Yeah, they dress differently. They may have a different function in business or society.
So it's like a bleed-through.
It is an absolute bleed-through. That's correct. I've seen a little of this, and the problem is it's starting to occur, and now the Andromedans said they're going to shut down time travel, and my information, which does come from inside the government, is that it was shut down on the weekend of October 4th of this year, and has been shut down since. There has been admissions that all time travel programs are, quote, in trouble, and they said flat out they had stopped.
Now, were they controlled from specific regions or positions in the U.S. or around the world? Or were there?
Do not know. All time travel on the planet has stopped. Certain of the elements involved, such as the artificial grid, which was built by, I don't know if it's just our government or joint cooperation, which was used for the basis for time travel, has vanished. Certain communication systems, particularly navigational systems, seem to be non-functional or very poorly functional compared to what they were beforehand.
And would that cause crashing of ships?
Theoretically, it could. That's one of the problems. They have backup systems, fortunately. The GPS system, I can't say for sure. I've had reports from one source that it has become almost non-operational, but this was in one local point. And I've been trying to get corroboration from other people, like airline pilots, where the system is used, whether or not this has happened or not, and I've not gotten an answer yet. But the other thing that's of interest is a friend of mine who has a very large, shall we say, radio laboratory with receivers which will cover everything from about 10 hertz up into the gigahertz region, has, of course, over the years, because of his interests, monitored the particular and specific frequency used for communication through wormholes, i.e. through time. Okay. There are certain frequencies and channels which are open for this. And he monitored them periodically to see if they're just functioning out of his own curiosity, and maybe because he had an assignment to do so, for all I know. But he reported after the October 4th, I asked him to check into this when I heard something and learned that this was a possibility, and I knew October 4th weekend something happened. He started checking into it and found out that all of these special wormhole frequencies didn't function anymore. There was nothing but noise on those channels. So he had some proof himself that there had been a major and drastic change in communications on this planet.
I'm sorry. Do you think this has long-term implications?
I would say yes. I don't think they shut it down for a matter, assuming they did do it and have the capabilities, and I would say they undoubtedly have the capabilities, but I would not expect them to do this for a matter of a month or two. I imagine this is going to be for years, maybe decades, unless we find a way around it. I do know governments are working on a way around it. So far as I know, they've not been successful yet, but that's not inside information, it's not accurate information. That they are fighting it to find a way around it, yes, I don't know. I do not know if they've been successful. There's no indication that I see that they have been so far. This is a major shift, shall we say, in the paradigm of what goes on with our society and civilization. We can't time travel anymore. We can't interfere with the future or the past or try to change history now. We're blocked from doing that. But also, we're also blocked from using certain defensive weapons at the same time, which was used in terms of diverting Hale-Bopp. That capability is now shut down. The particle-beam weapon systems still work, but there was another additional factor which I don't want to go into television about, which was developed, I can only say by our government. I cannot say whether it's available outside of the U.S. or not. But they had other capabilities which were very helpful and useful in diverting Hale-Bopp and were essential, actually. One of those systems is now shut down because of this closure on time travel. So we're in a peculiar position. A lot of the alien groups which were using time travel to get in and out with their ships are now blocked. Some of their ships are trapped here. According to Alex, certain of the alien groups are now blocked here. They can't go back home because they had to use time travel to do it. And it creates a rather interesting situation.
Is it because they want us to see how we're doing on our own without help?
This is another aspect of it. In prior conversations with Alex, the Andromedans have stated that they wish all, and I don't know how they're going to do it, but they wish all aliens, friendly and otherwise, to be off planet Earth by the year 2000 and see whether humans can manage their own affairs without being interfered with and do it appropriately. I think they can, but the problem is there's been so much alien interference over the centuries, and in terms of our governments today in the last century, this current one, aliens are actually involved in the government. And they are quite capable of disguising themselves to look like humans. There are shapeshifters, and there are those who, with a little bit of either cosmetic surgery or cosmetic cover-up, can look enough like a human to be accepted as one. And they're in our government.
Well,
and foreign governments.
People aren't going to just readily relinquish their power, are they?
Of course not. Those who have power don't want to let it go. They quite literally have to be beaten over the head, to put it that way. Beaten allegorically, and the power removed from them forcibly, if they don't want to give it up for the betterment of humanity, but want to retain power for their own selfish purposes, which is, of course, what has happened in this past century. Going back into the last century, the governments have deteriorated. Private enterprise groups, multinational corporation groups wish to retain their power and their profit for their own sake, and without any general consideration of the welfare of humanity. I'm not saying that of all corporations by any means, but there are those who are in that sort of situation. There are governments who have become that way because of the interference. They no longer are able to think in terms of humanity. They think they are, but there is a problem called mind control and mind manipulation, which is partly alien technology, partly our own, which let us say, the most altruistic, most benign human who wishes to do something for humanity can have their minds twisted to the point where they can be made to work for anyone for any purpose. And have a little help with some aliens that are in the government, of course, then this becomes much easier. You can physically burn out the brain and the nervous system with too much electromagnetic energy, so that, let us say, psychic defenses and such, to minimize or greatly reduce the effects of mind manipulation, mind control systems, work up to a point. But after a certain point, if you burn the whole system out, it doesn't make any difference.
I see. Yeah.
Now, in his case, they were working experimentally at Montauk to see if they could increase his psychic ability, already known as to what he had. And they exposed him to all kinds of RF signals and other things, and that was where the damage occurred. They literally burned out his neural pathways, not just the brain, through much of the nervous system of the body was severely damaged. But somehow he kept going and kept functioning. And undoubtedly because of his psychic abilities. And there are cases on record in the medical annals. And I know some of them come out of England where they had a guy go through school and get his PhD in mathematics. And for some reason he had to have a physical examination, which included a scanning of his brain and so forth, and they found that his entire skull cavity was filled with water. There was no brain. And all it was the medulla, which is the lower brain which controls the physical functions. You don't live without that. But all the rest of the cerebellum and cerebrum was missing, and they couldn't believe it.
No.
The guy was functioning in a perfectly normal manner. Nobody knows how he did it.
So
he didn't know it. He didn't know that he had any deficiency of brains. He certainly made his mark in going through school. So there are a lot of strange aspects about the physical nervous system, the brains and such, which are not fully understood.
yeah, because then you would say that the intelligence and wouldn't be housed in your brain, but be housed somewhere else, maybe in your aura, or maybe in your cells or DNA, or
Yeah. Now, there's aspects which are not fully understood. One of the main aspects is if you're subjected to mind manipulation and such, the first thing they want to find, or will do if they don't find, is a for whatever purpose, they will desynchronize the right brain. Most people, percent or more of the population, do not have synchronous. It's fairly well known medically, but they don't talk about it. They talk about right-brain people, left-brain people for that reason. One predominates over the other, and they're not synchronized. There are techniques for resynchronizing the two lobes, left and right, and if they are synchronized, it becomes very difficult. With the normal means and the normal manipulations for mind control and mind manipulation, they just don't work. Hypnosis may still work. I don't know about that. I don't have an answer to that one. But most of the manipulative techniques synchronized left and right lobes, because you're either hitting the physical side of the brain, that is the materialistic side of the personality, or the spiritual side too. Particularly the spiritual side is not that susceptible, but the material side alone without the balance is.
I see, because this is all 3D technology actually, what they're still using. It's outer technology, and you can only use that on outer material things, not on the psychic abilities.
You can enhance. Hey, he came back. You can enhance the psychic abilities by various training techniques, of course, and it will enhance the ability. If you do that sort of thing, balance the two lobes. And then there are cases probably where the psychic ability is highly predominant. When somebody is, I guess it's left brain, is more left brain than right brain, highly dominant in the psychic sense, and perhaps very poor in terms of living in the material world. There are people of that type.
Yeah.
Now, whether they would suffer from their psychic ability being reduced if their brain was balanced properly, synchronized, I don't know.
Sure, if I can get a 40% discount.
Wat mooi, hè? Oh, past precies. Het past precies. Ja.
Is that your last tape?
No. Okay.
We're scanning the skies for UFOs.
And that mushroom mycelium